Welcome to the Iteration Podcast YouTube special. So this is a lot less formal. And so what we're doing here is I actually have a client project that I am starting. I'm writing code this evening for it, and I'm super excited about this project. And since I have a completely fresh domain design that I've been trying to build that shared language with the client for the past 2 or 3 months, I am showing it to JP for the first time, actually, and talking through my domain together with him. And we thought it might be helpful to include you in this conversation, although heavily a visual conversation. And so I don't think this will lend itself to the audio feed. I don't think we'll publish this in the audio feed. We'll probably throw this on YouTube somewhere and then mention it in the podcast, I would imagine. I don't know. We'll see what we end up doing with it. I am recording my screen, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with JP so he can see what I'm doing. So my entire screen, and it's this one, my second monitor. All right, so the first thing I'd like to do, JP, is walk you through the domain a little bit. So just like describe what the product is as an elevator pitch real quick so you kind of know what it is we're discussing. So this is kind of the elevator pitch of what is Diamond. So what is Diamond? I guess before we jump in, do you have any questions or anything else?
No.
Okay, cool. Here we go.
Right
All right, let's get right to it. So what is Diamond? Diamond helps friends do more awesome stuff by taking the pain out of payments between friends. The organizer sets the deadline date, total cost, and minimum head count. Diamond automatically splits costs depending on how many guests commit by the deadline. If not enough guests commit by the deadline, nobody gets charged. So essentially, it's like a micro Kickstarter for groups of friends. It's a go, no-go type of thing. In a way, kind of a Venmo competitor, but it's tied to this date time and this go, no-go concept. So that's the pitch. Any questions on the pitch?
No, I think that's pretty straightforward, at least of what I know of it.
Yeah, so this is, we have full wireframes, did the whole Envision thing for this whole product. So this has all been very lightly tested, but heavily talked through with the team. And there has been some testing with raw users as well with these mockups, which is great. This project luckily needed less research and testing because it's actually an existing product in the world. So if you visit diamondnow.com, this is a product out in the world, but right now it's like this hacked together approach using a Squarespace site and like Celery, which is like this payment processor. It's super fully manual, but I love that this founder took the time to do that and kind of hack it together to just validate the product. So this product's been validated, tested, at least in simple sense, and now it's just a matter of building out this version 1.0. So it's going to be just a Rails web app for now, but I'm going to do my best to build it to all of the newer progressive web app standards put out by Google, which means that it can load when offline and it caches certain things in the browser because I want to hopefully be able to package this up into some type of an app into the app stores. Probably kind of the Basecamp approach is what I've been playing with a lot lately, which is using turbo links to kind of mock this native app approach. All of that's all technical and doesn't really matter. What I would like to jump into now is talking through this kind of non-UML domain design that I've got here. And I had a couple questions that I was hoping to kind of solve and walk through with your expertise, JP.
Sure. Hold on. First of all, you can do that with Rails where you can like load it when a user's offline. Like you can load
yeah, you can with the whole app manifest JSON and everything. I've just been playing with it in one of my client projects, and it's awesome. Like when I add this app to my home screen, when I launch, it looks exactly like a native app when it's on my home screen on an iPhone. And when I launch it, it gets rid of the title bar, the system level navigation, it caches your last state, and it also has a loading screen. So it's like, it feels so native, except for that I have some performance issues on this specific client app. Like my average load time is probably like 800 milliseconds. So it feels a little slow, but if I start caching and get my Rails performance better, I really think I can get it to feel very close to native. So getting it into an app store is really easy, at least for like these MVP type version 1 products. I don't think I'm going to pursue using someone like you's expertise of React Native or anything else for now. I think I'm going to try to go through this Basecamp stack and try to be a one-man shop and do it. We'll see how that works out. I'm really hesitant on the Android side because I've already done it using Xcode and the TurboLinks pods, Cocoa pods, and like got my app working in a native app that supposedly is supposed to be approved through the App Store.
Oh, shoot.
But I have no idea how to even start for Android. Android. But even if for now my stack is web, mobile web, and iOS, that's a pretty solid stack for most startups, I think.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I don't want to ignore Android, of course, but also on Android, mobile web is a little bit more of a first-party citizen. Like adding to the home screen is easier. You can prompt it a little better, things like that. Okay. Any other questions before we jump into the domain?
No questions at all. Let's just jump right in.
All right, sorry. I feel like I'm rambling. I've been working on this so much, and I'm just like excited to talk to someone. By the way, I'm using this app called Delineato Pro, and it's like $5, and it's the best graphing app. It's a native Mac app that's awesome. So it's just a simple graphing app. So of course, I have a user. I wanted to have different user roles. So a user could be an organizer, an administrator, or a participant. And I didn't put that here, so let me add that real quick. Admin, participant, or organizer, and we'll talk through those different roles in a second. The reason I don't want to have distinct user objects for an organizer or a participant is because I want participants to be able to organize events and vice versa. Like, just because you're an organizer doesn't mean you can't participate in other events.
Right.
So the main two objects here is a user object and then events. I'm going to talk through a user real quick. A user will have payment info, payout info, which is how they will receive money collected from an event. I don't know if this object should exist, but an SMS, and then a user will have contacts. So potentially in the future, you'll be able to use this import service to import contacts to be able to more easily send an invitation to other users. But for now, this is not being built out. Because I don't have a native app of any kind. I don't have a way to connect to an address book. So that's really a user model. I also have this concept of a token for authentication. Before I've kind of buried this in my user model, like generate auth token and save that on the user model. Instead, I think I'm going to make it its own database, its own database table. And then tokens, you can have multiple tokens for a user and they can be either expired or active, and you can re-authenticate using the same token system. That's what I'm thinking. So from a token, I'll have a validator service and a request service. That sends and validates tokens. So that's like an SMS token. So I enter my phone number and then a token. I use this language, but I've never actually split it out into its own object ever. So what are your thoughts on splitting that into its own object? Is that one that makes sense?
Well, I was just going to ask even before that, are you just going to do like a hash secure password and just use like the built-in thing? Or are you going to, and like in addition to like a jot or something? Like, how are you doing the
good question. So one of the specs of this application is that it's passwordless. So it has to be SMS token authentication. So that's the reason for this tokens and token authentication. So it's breaking all the standard email password. This build actually has no email support of all. And that's one thing I want to consider is in the future, how would I add email support in the future? Because I know that's on the hot backlog of what they want to add is email receipts and stuff. But for now, it's all SMS, both login and notifications.
Oh, so you're doing a one-time password type thing.
Yeah.
Can you do because I've only ever done that on a Firebase tutorial. Can you walk me through just in a minute or two how that works? The because we're doing it with WizTutor, and we were also doing it with Uvotech.
Yep. Yeah, I've built a couple of these now, and I tend to really prefer this pattern that I've found. I am not sure how normal this pattern is, but I've talked to a couple guys who know security a little bit better than me, and they seem to be yeah, that should be okay. Luckily, I don't have scale yet, so I'm opening up a new just Sublime Text document to kind of walk through this real quick. So basically, how I've done it in the past is I have a user object, and then within my user, I have something like token. Okay, so then when I request a token, I will update this token to a new value. So let's say it's 473664. I will request a token to an SMS phone number. So I can assume that user only has that phone number. So that gets sent to their phone. And then when the user comes back, they give me their phone number and the token. And if I look up the user by this phone number and the given token matches their token, I can then store in the session the user ID. The same way that you would do an email password validating. So once this validates, it's the same process as managing any other login. The other way that we've done that is have another token. So that's the basic how I'm planning on doing it for this app. It's a little bit more complicated under the hood, but that's really it. And then every time a token is requested in the way I've built it before, this token is updated. So if I just click the button request token again, this would be this. And then I would have to give this new token to log in again. And
you just like use bcrypt to like, I'm guessing, to hash the token or no?
No, but I probably should. Only because once this token is used, then it's cleared. And if you don't have an existing token, you can't log in again. So once I do this validation, it's cleared. So the only security risk would be in between requesting and authenticating the token. This would be available on the server before the authentication attempt, because when you authenticate and it successfully authenticates, it clears that token's value. I didn't do that before, and actually a Rails guy who I knew was a little more experienced, he's like, why don't you clear it once it validates? That way you can't reuse the same tokens. And that just helps it so you don't have to hash the password or anything like that. There's no concept of has hash password or anything like that. I think using a token model, I would follow pretty much the same concept, but instead of a token column living on the user, I would have a token object, and the token would have like value, and it would have expiration, and maybe like a requester, which would be the user ID. And then I could more easily hash that if I wanted to. I could hash this token against something and secure it, the value of the token. The reason I'm thinking about doing this is because then I can have multiple tokens that have different expirations. It just seems more flexible in the future, because before, outside of this whole like token login instead of username and password, there's also a concept of like API token against the user, which is like a really long QRZ79 that they're able to make requests against their account with that API token. So requesting this SMS token validates and refreshes this API token in the past, but instead of having those two separate systems, I'm thinking about just having one token system that manages all of this.
So you're saying like instead of having like a token, an API token on there as like a column in the user model? Yeah,
exactly. Having a database table of tokens with the requester. I'm not too worried about the authentication piece, but I'm glad that you're asking me about it to think deeper about it. And honestly, for this product, I think this might be over-engineering to have this tokens authentication system. I think I might just do it as a token column the same way I've done it on other projects. The only thing is this is handling financial information, so I want to be a little bit more careful with authentication overall, because most stuff I was building before doesn't have a lot of high security type information. There's very low risk with the information that I have in my system. I mean, here I'm not directly storing financial information. It's going to be with the payment provider, but still, like, there's risk there. So,
yeah, totally. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know how I would approach that. I might just throw a token and like an API token column on the user, but
yeah, on the user. I'm thinking I'm going to get rid of this and keep this validator service and request service for tokens, because that to me makes a lot of sense to have those. I think and I also like the idea that a single token, it's less to manage. I know that I can clear it once it's authenticated. I don't have to manage multiple tokens waiting to be authenticated. There's not really a use for that, I don't think, for me.
Yeah, and those services would just like what we were talking about with Ernesto of like, how not to use callbacks. I imagine it would
exactly, because right now all this is sitting in callbacks for me. Exactly right. Yeah, so I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to go with my original gut, which was to add a column with a token on it in the database, the same way I've done it on other projects. Essentially, I'm just moving these service objects to be connected to the user, not to this whole token concept. So that's what I'm denoting with service objects, these weird little circle things. So this stuff's pretty straightforward. A user has payment info, which that'll be like, if I was using Stripe, that would be like their Stripe ID that's associated with them. Maybe some other info, like if I needed to collect their street address to validate payment information, that could live in this object. Anything that's not the actual credit card number, like I could store their last four, I could cache it here or whatever that looks like. And then a payout info, and that's again like what payout provider are they using and how that all works. An SMS object, I don't think it'll live in my database, but I think I'll have a model of an SMS to be able to like new SMS. And then there's a sending service associated with that SMS, just to, again, prevent those ugly callbacks. And then So this contacts is, I'm just going to delete it now because for now we don't have this concept. So I'm just going to get rid of contacts because I don't have it for now.
Cool.
So let's jump into the meat of the application, which is really this events concept. So the concept of an event is like the main. So when you go through this application, the first step as an organizer to collect money from my friends is creating an event. So you set the name of your event, the total cost, the minimum number of people for the event, and when they need to, quote, dime in by, which is commit by. And then it says, okay, here's your Yosemite trip. Everyone will pay between $61 and $83 depending on how many people dime in. So you have this concept of publishing an event page. You can add more details to it. And then you get an event link for your event page that you can throw into a group chat or whatever. And then the event page looks something like this. Yosemite trip. This is what someone who might be a participant would see. They'd see details, who's committed to the event, and the ability to commit the event. So that's what like the event model is handling all that. So we have this concept of an event. There's event replies, which in my mind, this is how it would handle whether or not someone has committed, not confirmed. So a committed reply, a declined reply, or an unacknowledged reply. I actually group this under replies, a charge associated to a reply. So if you have a committed reply, it would have a charge or a pending charge, and that would have a processing service associated using a user's payment info. So if an event passes, meaning enough participants reply with a committed state before the event due date, then it would process charges against those committed replies. Ooh, I could even have a charged state of reply. I like that. That's working for me. Then there's a concept of invitations, which is like in the event page, there's this share page where I can explicitly say, I can invite someone via SMS. So enter a friend's phone number and we'll send them a special link to your event. We'll also nudge them if they don't reply. So then you enter a friend's mobile number and hit send, and it sends them out a invitation object, which has a link to the event. The reason I like the idea of an invitation object is because I can have an invitation URL, so I know if that user has sent, like if it's been sent, and then if it's been seen. So I know if a friend has actually seen the event page just by them clicking it. There's also this concept of like when you view an event page, the first thing you have to do is give your first name here. So when I click on an event page, if it doesn't know who I am, I have to give my first name before even viewing the trip details. That way I can start to build this roster of who's committed or who hasn't, or so essentially by entering your name here, you build out yourself a pending invitation with a status against it, a pending reply, I should say. So by entering, anyone who views this page has a reply object associated with them.
Okay.
The reason there's all this is because we're trying to avoid this concept of having to explicitly invite every single friend via SMS or like linking your address book or going through this extra work. The idea is that this roster of who's going and not going gets easily built as people enter their first name to view this event detail.
Okay.
So this application is really unique in that I can commit to an event by just giving you my first name and credit card number. I actually don't have to sign up for the platform in any way.
Oh, damn, this is a fucking dope app. It's like Facebook events, but it's like if you combine Facebook events and Venmo.
Yeah, it's Facebook events and Venmo, but nobody needs a fucking account. That's why I love this. All you have to give is your first name. And what's cool about this is like if you've got the lazy guy in the group who's just like is flaky, he'll enter his first name. Steve enters his first name, or Steven's the organizer. So Bill enters his first name and then views this page. In 24 hours, I'll just set his status as unconfirmed. So everybody knows Bill's seen it, but he hasn't committed to it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's fucking cool.
So back to this invite concept, which is more explicit than the whole first name collection. If I invite someone via SMS and send that off, it will then ask their first name, but then I'm actually able to remind them to follow up and explicitly decline or opt in. So there's this concept of a nudge, which is an invitation nudge. So depending on the state, I need a place to manage those rules. But there's going to be some type of a nudge automator service that will ping any pending invitation or any seen invitation that doesn't have a reply yet. Really, invitations should belong to replies. I'm realizing, no, it should belong to events. This is getting weird. It's getting a little bit awkward. Because invitation depends on the state of the reply.
It does?
Well, to a certain degree, because if an invitation, the status of an invitation depends on whether or not a reply exists with a committed status or committed state.
You can't just send invitations all willy-nilly to an event from an event?
Yeah, you can. But also, I think the ability to view a pending invitation would be super helpful. And I'm realizing as I'm talking to you, entering a potential invite's first name and cell phone number makes a lot more sense, because then I don't have to collect anything from the user viewing the event. So on this invite screen, it should really be invite via S&M first SMS, first name and mobile number. Would that make sense?
I think so. So, okay, as an organizer, I make an event, and after the event is created, I'm prompted with like a send invite screen. And so this is like the send invite screen is basically the create action of your invitation object.
Correct.
Right. So remind me how replies plays into that, because to me it feels like invitations are completely decoupled from replies. But remind me what a reply is.
A reply is the main object that handles whether or not someone is committed, declined, or been charged for an event.
Okay.
So if you clicked on the invitation, viewed the invitation, and clicked commit to event, that is the create new reply with a status of commit. If you click decline, that is create a new reply with a status of decline.
Okay, and it defaults to unacknowledged, I'm
Correct.
guessing.
It does, yeah.
Okay.
I think I might add a pending state here, which is like a 24-hour period of that it's been created, but it's pending because we don't have an answer either way from them. So I think 24 or 48 hours. I think it depends on the timeline of the event. Like if the event's tomorrow, I might automatically make that unacknowledged. Yeah.
But then how do replies and invitations... Oh, okay.
Because I know if an invitation I explicitly sent you has now turned into a commitment, really. Maybe there's a concept of a commitment instead of a reply.
So don't replies belong to invitations then? Like, and not the other way around?
The only reason they wouldn't is because there's this whole concept of the event link where anonymous people can just view the event and then they enter their first name, and this just builds a reply object.
Okay.
So right here, when I've entered my first name, I have a reply object with a state of unacknowledged.
Right. Okay, so then, but you're saying if invitations belong to replies?
No, right now they belong to events. But what I'm saying is I think there's a use case in the future, or now even, where on this event page, I can click see all invitations sent and see all the statuses against them, especially if I'm collecting first name upon invitation create.
Okay.
Because then it's like, okay, they're not committed, but actually I would show it right here in this committed column. I would say, Jason has been invited, but hasn't committed yet. That would be different states here with all these names, which would probably be better in a list view with the states next to them, like that.
Right.
So I could say Jane, here, this is ugly, but I could say Jane has been invited. And let me get my interface back up with command period, which is a fun sketch shortcut. So you get what I'm saying. There can be states against each of these participants. So Jane has been invited, Steve has committed. And these are, and the way I would manage this is using, which feels clunky, but it's using either replies or invite objects. So maybe instead of creating, really quickly, this is clunky. The language between these two is unclear because really, I feel like it should be one object somehow. I feel like if we had a better name for a concept here, I could send, like when I enter your first name and your SMS to invite you, that essentially can create a reply with an unacknowledged status right away.
Right. Couldn't you just have a status on invitations? So the invitation could have a status that was committed, declined, unacknowledged, charged.
And get rid of replies altogether. It's confusing to me because the people visiting this link which I think is most people. Most people are just going to toss this link into their group chat and hope it gets managed from there. So these people aren't necessarily invited to the event. That's not an invite in my mind. That's where it feels clunky. And I think this is honestly, this whole invite via SMS is currently on like a little bit of a backlog. This isn't core to the app yet, but I think it's a really important feature. But the core functionality is this whole invite link concept.
Right. And that's just like a public link that anyone can see.
Yeah, it's just this unique link. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Yeah, because I think it's easy to conflate replies and invitations because in many ways they're almost the same thing, but not really.
Right. Maybe it would be more clear if it was an invitation reply, but it's not always from an invitation. That's what's difficult. Like a reply doesn't have to be created from an invitation object.
Right. It could be from that group link, right? So then maybe it's just replies, and then you have columns in replies that are like is invitation, and that's just a Boolean value. I don't know. That is interesting.
It's not really an invitation either. It's more of like a share. So what if this was a concept of like a share, and that share has been sent or seen, and we don't do anything more than that?
Yeah, and it could just be like a
that's weird though.
Like a map, it's just like a category kind of a thing.
Because in reality, all this is a short link generator where I'm tracking these short links against shares. But it also belongs to a user, because when I create this new invitation object with a first name and an email, I'm creating a user in my database. So when they click through that link, they're authenticated on the platform and can give me a reply object of committed, declined, charge. So if you had an existing account with Dime In, let's say, and I invited you to this event, it would automatically find your payment method and know that you're authenticated because I've just authenticated you through this link. I know you have your phone.
Interesting. So they are two different things, really.
Is there a reason why they shouldn't be? Yeah, because we keep conflating them in conversation, I feel like.
I just think that if you were to have them, they shouldn't be coupled. Like, it doesn't make sense to tie replies to invitations, nor the other way around, nor vice versa.
So really surfacing this whole concept of sent versus seen on an invitation level doesn't make a lot of sense. I feel like in some way an invitation is a pending reply, isn't it?
An invitation is a pending reply.
A sent invitation is also a pending reply.
It is, yeah. So maybe maybe an invitation is inherits from reply.
I like this.
And then it becomes a reply invitation, or something.
Yeah, so let's try this. Let's have an invitation inherit from replies.
Right. And so it's a kind of reply.
Yeah.
That's just such bad language because it's not a reply. It's a prompt to get a reply.
What could we use instead of reply? What if this changed to commitment? And then it's a commitment invitation. That's just clunky.
God, why is naming things so hard?
Commitment invitation. I mean, that works. This makes it more explicit on what's going on here. And then you have an invitation status, but you understand that it's a commitment with the current status of unacknowledged.
I feel like unacknowledged and pending are like almost... I feel like there's not enough that's different between them.
I think I should just change this whole unacknowledged concept to just declined. So if you don't respond with a certain period, there's a business rule in some kind of service that changes your status of pending to declined.
Yeah.
After a certain period.
I think so too.
So where to put the rules? That's another question. Where do I put the rules? Do I put the rules of when a status of pending changes to declined? My dog needs to go to the bathroom. Okay.
That's cool.
Cool. So we really haven't solved the nuance here, and I think it's worth talking about a little more. So before we had an an invitation here and a reply. I think an invitation is super clear. Like, we get what's going on. It also works with events. Like, oh, what if we change this to an RSVP?
Okay.
I don't even know what that means, though. I'm just trying to go with the event language of the domain.
RSVP. You mean like you don't know what that stands for?
No, I have no idea.
No, really? It stands for Répondez s'il vous plaît, which in French means please respond.
Oh, that's funny. We use it as a noun. Right?
Yeah, we do.
In English. Okay. Does this make things more clear? Because when I would create an invitation object, wouldn't that create a pending RSVP? And that's like clear that I would understand. Oh, I'm creating a new RSVP. I am creating a new invitation. I'm sending invitation, so I have a pending RSVP.
Yes. What's the reasoning behind not having everything just be an invitation, like through that group share link? Like if I click on it's public, so you don't want to create an invitation object every time someone clicks that or like goes through that link or responds to that link.
To me, it's just unclear on what's going on then. Like, I wouldn't use the language of invitation for someone who's committed.
But then the invitation can have like a status of committed or like pending.
It feels awkward to me to have the object be the question instead of the answer.
Right.
The invitation is the question, and the RSVP or response is the answer. And I don't know what the best practice would be, but it feels awkward to me because the majority of the time I'm going to be managing the answers, not the questions.
Yeah, maybe it's just as simple as like request response, like you have a request and then you have a response, and then those are two separate objects.
I like that. So instead of an invitation and a reply, RSVP, we have a request and a response. Yeah, I just liked that we were using words in the domain, how people think of events.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what you can rename them to something that's more domain specific, but at the core of it, you can just think of it like a request and response cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think so I think the most clear object name here is reply. That's what RSVP stands for.
Yeah.
An invitation is a clear... So the whole concept is like, when I send one of these objects, I want a pending one of these to be created. So inherently, it makes more sense to just create this object in a pending state.
Mm-hmm. Maybe you don't even... Yeah. Maybe an invitation doesn't persist to your database. It's just it's not an active record model. It's just a model that makes a reply, which a reply would be an active record model.
Invitation to reply? Let's come back to this. I think that I like the idea that there's some kind of not an object in the database, so not an invitation object, but some type of like pending reply. It's just so clunky to like think of, to use the, doesn't matter. Okay. It's just clunky. So then in my mind, an event would have, from replies, there'd be charges. So there's this concept of like an event having a state of passing or failing or funding. So there's these different states associated to an event. So if the cutoff date arrives and not enough people have replied with a committed and added a payment info to their account to commit to the event, then the event will fail and no payout would be created. So then there's this concept of an event being funded. So the event has been charged. Now, the platform allows users to create events without adding payment info. So this is the last screen of creating an event, which is the prompt to share the event. And it's prompting the user here that their payout information is missing. So you actually can create an event without payout information. So what that means is I need to have a way to hold these funds until I remove them from my account in some way.
Okay.
So that's the way I was going to manage this, is an event. So I could look through all of the event charges that have happened, and then I can populate what the balance is of a user's account.
Okay.
So a user is an organizer with many events that have been funded. Therefore, they have many charges which have been processed. And I can now create a new payout against that pending balance.
Okay.
And then they're like, account balance would show based on the differences between the total of charges and total of payouts. Wow, that gets really clunky really quick.
You kind of lost me. Okay, at a higher level, how does this work? So, like, let's say your Yosemite trip costs $100 and you have 4 people, so you need to get like $25 each. So, are you charging? So, are the 4 participants paying that total $25 each?
Correct.
To the event organizer?
So it gets charged to our platform and the funds get held. The reason is because we possibly don't yet have a place to pay it out.
Okay. So is it sort of like how, okay, let's say I'm an organizer for an event. How would I do this without the app is I would just pay for everything myself. Let's say I'm going, I have to pay Yosemite, whatever, a fee. So I just pay that out of pocket and I ask everyone to Venmo me $25.
Then in your Venmo balance, you have a pending balance until you cash out.
Okay, but the thing is that like I already paid Yosemite, for example. I'm just getting my friends to pay me $25 each to reimburse me.
Yeah.
So what happens is like I'm paying the full amount. Mm-hmm. It's I'm really like not the middleman, but I'm the main person.
Yeah.
And is that the same thing with this, or are all 4 people paying directly to Yosemite, for example?
No. So the pitch with this is it's exactly the Venmo situation you talked about for Yosemite camping, but instead of doing it on the back end, we do it all up front. So let's say you want to go camping in 2 months. You send a Diamond event link to everybody now with an expiration of 2 weeks. So everybody has 2 weeks to pay you for camping. If not enough people pay you, then no one is charged. If enough people commit to paying you, in 2 weeks, everybody's charged and you have the money the next day available in your Diamond account. But then if you haven't yet added a payout method, you have to create a new payout for yourself to remove the funds from your Diamond account balance. But I can't think of a way to manage an account balance outside from having an aggregate of charges associated with an event that each have an amount and a status against them. So a charge can have a status of has been paid out or not.
Okay, so charges would be like the individual charges of each
the collection
person.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the payouts is the disbursement
for the event organizer. Okay,
Yeah.
That's the word, organizer. Okay, interesting.
But I think that is the first thing that will break its scale is like if I have an event with 99 participants and I have 12 events in my account, I have to then multiply 12 times 99 charges times each of individual charges amounts to get this user's current balance in their account.
Okay.
That's pending to be paid out. But one reason we want to go with this model is because in the future we can avoid a lot of fees. If you are organizing an event, then you have a bunch of money sitting in Diamond. You can commit to other events using your Diamond balance instead of paying credit card fees again.
Like Venmo, got it.
So moving money within our platform is going to be free, but paying money in with a credit card, we have to charge 3%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so kind of like Venmo.
Cool.
But so I have no idea how to better handle those balances. There has to be a way, but I'm not sure what it is.
You're talking about the charges from the replies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you and you're tying charges to reply?
I was thinking about doing that, correct.
What if you just had charges tied to event?
All right. It doesn't change much. It makes it easier to query, which is nice. So I think that's a good change. Because now I don't have to query through replies. I can just query directly to the charge object.
Right, and it makes sense that way. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like the example in domain-driven design where like shipping, where investments were tied to whatever, but like that's under the assumption. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm over designing, but like, what if you don't want to split it evenly? Like, what if someone has to pay more But that's like,
Oh no, because actually that is a really like a number one use case is that on this screen to dime in, you'll have a button that says dime in for my someone else too, for like my significant other. So like, because like
okay.
me and my wife, we're not going to each do the dime in page. Like that's so annoying. I should be able to just dime in for someone else on this screen. So actually having charges be separate from replies makes a lot of sense. And then a reply can just check to see if there's a charge to know if it's been charged or not.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think like it really makes sense to be like event.charges versus like event.reply.charges.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense. That's a really good that's a good point. So I really want to get back to this whole pending reply / invitation concept, but I'm going to rename it that because that was the original name for now. But
Yeah.
I want to talk through real quick a couple services I have. So a couple questions I had here is, actually first one, before I jump into that, how in this domain would I associate users and events? The reason I'm having trouble is because a event belongs to a user, but then I need another way to associate a user to an event. Like, I don't really understand how users are associated to events in this domain, actually.
Okay, so
Like, how does a user have many events? So I get that an organizer is the creator. So it's like, okay, that user has many events. So the only events that I actually have are the ones that I've created. But how would I how would I query against events that you have declined or committed to?
To me, it sort of just feels like you need like a join table of like user events, right? So it's like a has many through and not like a has and belongs to many. Like, so like users will have many events, but events will also have many users. So you can, it feels like it would be like users have many events through user events or something like that. And you have like events have many users through user events.
I think that's one way to approach it. When hearing you talk, though, I can't think of a time when I would need to go events.users. Because I can go event.replies, event.charges. Like, I don't know why I would actually query against the user objects for events.
But wouldn't you need to see like what users are in that event or no?
That would be based on who's replied.
Right. Okay.
I mean, let me think of another time, though, because the nudges, this whole nudge concept, these reminders, those should not be tied to invitations. Because there's also this concept of like nudging users who have committed, but there aren't enough. So like 24 hours before the expiration to nudge those users and be like, hey, there's not enough people. Go bug your friends and try to get them to commit to this event. So nudge should not be tied to an invitation at all. That's so weird. It should be tied to an event. I'm getting too much nesting here. Like I'm trying to put everything below other things and my nesting's getting too deep. You see what I'm saying about nudges specifically?
Yeah. I'm even thinking that I thought nudges would like belong to like a user, maybe even.
No, because I don't think that I'll need to send any nudges that aren't consistent with events. And if they are, they'll only be for login, logout, or account notifications.
Got it. Okay.
In fact, I like it that I am limiting what the marketing team can do here, only because I don't really want the ability for them to nudge all users like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? Do it through Dime In. I just don't like that idea. I like it so it's like if I have like been checking out an event or been invited to an event, then I'll get nudges for this explicit event and then it's over. It's very disposable. I want it very lightweight.
Sure.
Okay, so that's helpful. I don't remember what we were talking about. How to associate users and events. That's what we were talking about.
Right. That's a good question.
I'm almost thinking reply needs to be the object above an event. No, that doesn't make sense. And reply should belong to events. It's event.replies.
What if it was just super simple and you just had users have many events and that was it? And then events belong to a user.
But the only events I'd be able to query against in a performant way would be organizers' events because they're the creators. So there'd be one user ID on the event which would associate to the organizer.
Okay, but we don't want that. Why?
I don't know. I think it might be nice to have a dashboard screen where you see all your events that whatever states, but it might make a lot of sense to be like my events, and that's the ones you are an organizer of, and then just below that all my replies, so I can see the statuses and update my statuses of my replies. So if I have currently declined, I can click on that reply and commit to it, even though I've declined.
Okay, but then as a participant, because a participant is also a user, so as a participant, should I be able to see all the events that I'm diving into?
Yeah, but you'd be able to see the replies and the states of those replies. So you'd be able to see all your commitments right there on your home screen.
Based on things I've replied to.
Yeah, because you have replies that have a committed status. So like this home screen here, when I think about it, I initially thought of it as a bunch of objects. So like here, in this example, Steven has no events he has created. That's why he's being prompted to create an event. But he has events that he has either committed to in green or declined in red.
Okay.
Oh, actually, these ones, he's the organizer in this mockup, so you are the event organizer in this mockup. But that still even works well, because event organizers are going to have replies as well, because I want to nest them under this concept of like the roster of who's committed. Inherently, the organizer should automatically be committed, I would imagine.
So how would I find...
Oh, that's a good question, actually. Is the organizer committed?
How would I, as a participant, how are you getting... So you're just grabbing their events through replies. So it would be like use event.replies. Like how does that happen? Like how would I grab my replies?
User.replies.
Oh, user.replies. Oh, okay. So replies belong to a user then.
Yeah. Through events.
Through events. Okay.
Yeah. But that's still a quick query. So user.events include replies, because I just learned that in Rails caching. And so then I can actually query user.replies. I also could do a has many on both of these. So users have many events, users have many replies. Because very few users will have events. Only organizers will have events. It kind of makes sense to have this reply object decoupled from the event object, honestly. I don't think decoupled. I think just also inheriting from user makes sense.
Okay.
Is that a bad practice to have something inherent from multiple parents? I think that's one thing we said in our podcast you shouldn't do.
So you're saying,
Also,
I don't...
this way.
So you're saying that a reply not inherits, but
I can't get this clean. This is probably a bad sign.
No, I think replies should just belong to events.
Okay, but we can query it through events then.
Yeah, but then
but then how do you associate users and events?
How do you associate users and events?
It seems so simple. Maybe it's just has and belongs to many. Maybe that's just what we need to do.
Yeah. Replies. So a user will have replies and a user will also have events. Yeah, it could just be as simple as that. Like, but it's still through events, but you can just have like a user ID on the reply. Or wait, it wouldn't be a user ID, it would be like it would be an event ID.
I can have a user ID on the reply.
And then like an organized? No, I don't know, maybe. And then maybe reply has an organizer ID, and then that way you can just grab it that way. Does that make sense? I don't know.
I think replies... My instinct says that replies should inherit from a user, so user has many replies, and then the reply has an event ID associated with it.
Okay.
But does that mean that if a reply has an event ID, in Rails at least, that means it belongs to events?
Yes.
So we're back to where we started.
So does a reply belong to... Maybe a reply belongs to an event and it belongs to a user.
Yeah, I think that's where we're landing, which is kind of the initial concept. But then, like, what does my controller look like for this?
Spaghetti.
Right.
I'm just kidding. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. Yeah, what the heck would it look like?
I think it would just be user.replies.
through events, like include replies. Yeah,
right. So has many replies through events. That's performant. That's best practice, right? If you
Yeah, I
had
think so.
if you had a blog post, if this was a post, right, and this is a comments, right?
Yeah, you do user.comments.
I would do user.comments has many comments through post.
There you go.
Yeah. So I think that works. I think that we just really overcomplicated a really simple concept, I think.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot.
Okay. So then should I have an explicit SMS object and should I store this in the database? What do you think? Should I just have a model that fires them or should I store them so there's an SMS log against each user on my end and not just Twilio?
I think initially my thought is to not store them in the database
I agree with you. That's my instinct.
unless you have a good reason to.
Yeah.
Um,
Where would the payment/payout provider logic live? So like if I went with Stripe, where would that fit to in this domain? In this payouts object or this charges object? Is that where it would live? Or in these processing services?
So like you would have two different services, one for charges and one for payouts.
Potentially. We're still negotiating with different vendors. So like if we went with a Stripe, if they would let us, we've been talking a lot with them. If we went with Stripe, they could handle both sides of this, which would be ideal because we don't have to move the money. But if we went with something like Braintree for the collection and then for the charges and then like payment rails for the payouts, then we would have to move the money between those two things, which would be a whole nother layer of domain logic that I'm not considering yet because we haven't landed on a final processor or payment or payout partner yet.
Did you talk to Shannon at all? Did he get back to you?
I did. We're supposed to talk on Tuesday. He's moving right now, so.
Well, I think that you would just have two separate services either way. One for payouts, one for charges, and then you can handle all the logic there.
Cool.
And it would just be like a wrapper.
That's what I was thinking, because I have a payouts processing service. And so if I wanted to do a different one, I could do like a PayPal processing service for that payout object in the future. Cool. Where would I add email support in this domain?
Be more specific. You mean like
For login and nudges.
Oh, okay.
I think this object SMS should probably be a notification object.
Yeah, and then maybe notification has children, SMS, and email.
Because we know we're doing email. So I think it makes sense to have all the logic wrapped in there, and then I can just add that extra line to fire it as an SMS. I don't know if SMS should belong to SMS notification. And then in the future I could have push notification and then the email notification.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I don't know why you would support email login per se. I don't think you would need to. I think like you can have maybe an email column in the user table, but I don't necessarily think that. I don't know. It would just go in with like your authentication service that you're doing with the token.
Yeah. Well, there'd be no reason I couldn't use an email for that. Like Square Cache lets you either do SMS or email.
Yeah. It would just be another service.
Yeah, I like the idea of changing that SMS object to a notification, and then I have an SMS notification object. I think for now I might drop this notification and just have it's an extra step of abstraction that I don't need, but having it be an SMS notification for now is clean to be able to split out. I don't know. I think it might be nice to have that sending logic, like the Twilio logic and stuff, within this SMS notification and sending service object. So I think I'll leave that for now. It's easy enough to just have this inherent and have an empty model called notification for now.
Yeah.
Because I like the idea of having a user.send notification, and then you could have like that way a user in the future could have notification settings and it sends the notification objects, whichever they are, depending on the okay, yeah.
Right.
Man. So then I have 3 objects to like manage the system. So one would be system settings. So that would be like our fee that we're charging. So like it would have something like a platform fee, things like that. Actually, I don't know what system settings would have, because then I also have this event fee policy that I was thinking of doing, which would have actually the event fees. So I don't know what this would be versus this. I actually don't know. But then I also have this concept of like nudge specifications, which would be like for each nudge type, what's the text? So I have a single place to like manage all of that text, to like send the marketing team, here's the model for nudge specifications, so they could see every different nudge type and the rules of all the different text generated. Because otherwise I'm going to end up with all of this crazy logic of what a nudge should say on what state living in the nudge, and I don't want that. I want a nudge specification. So if, like, you can have a about to fail nudge specification, and it's like, hey, your event is about to fail, and you have all that marketing language stored in that nudge specifications.
Right. Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice way to package that up.
That is what this week's podcast is about, is specification objects.
Really?
Yeah,
Dang,
yeah.
that's cool.
Is there any need for policies or factories? Going back to what we've talked about in our podcast.
I would make factories if there are really complicated objects that need to be created every time, but it doesn't feel like you need a factory yet.
I think I might have just found one. So under the event, we've been struggling with this whole RSVP versus invitation. What if there was another object that is a factory that creates both?
Okay, and it's just I don't even, what would you call that? It would just be like maybe it's an invitation object. That's what the factory is, and with an invitation you have RSVPs and something else that's like RSVPs and requests. I don't know. I don't know. But it feels like invitation is the like overarching factory for this whole thing in my head.
What if instead of an invitation object, there is a invitation factory, and all it does is create a pending reply, and I get rid of a state on an invitation? This isn't an object persisted in the database. It's literally just a factory that generates pending replies. Because let's be real, if you ask a question, the answer is inferred. So creating a pending answer means that there was a question asked.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah, so invitation doesn't persist to the database. It merely creates a reply.
And I don't think it's a factory. I think it's a service.
Right. But then you don't always have to have invitations to have replies.
Exactly.
Like you can have replies without the invitation. Nice. Okay. I like that.
I like this.
So that just generates a reply that's pending.
Yep. And then can handle the logic of sending that via SMS and creating the new user. Because then I can have this whole logic of like some kind of a service that's like existing user service that checks whether that user exists or not, and then create an account against that user. Yeah, this is the way to do it, I think. Because essentially creating an invitation is just creating a pending reply. But now I have something to point to. There's this invitation service.
Cool.
And
yeah, I like
to the
that.
user, that can be super explicit of send invite. And I think if someone else went in my code, they'd be like, oh, okay, this send invite controller and view in the routes is linked to this invitation service.
Cool. I like that.
Whew. I think we finally cracked that one. SMS notification. Yeah, I think that we've got something good there. The only other thing that I had here is where could I put the rules of when a... where could I put the rules of when a status pending changes to declined? I guess that could live in the reply object, would be fine for now. I don't think I need a reply policy to manage like when it changes state. And maybe that might be the place for the policy.
Are you just gonna do like an enum for that kind of a thing, or there's like 1, 2, 3, 4 corresponds to those different whatevers?
If I can, I want to. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that would make it kind of easy to just go ahead and have like built-in bang methods like committed ? Or committed bang.
Yeah, the only one that wouldn't be a specific state is charged, because that would have to check and see whether or not there's a charge object in the database. So that wouldn't necessarily be... But I think that'll be a whole separate concept, which makes sense. I think that's a different method to check that state.
Okay.
Because
committed,
I think you'll want to know whether or not a reply is committed, declined, or pending, regardless of whether or not there's an existing charge, I think.
Right.
I think
Exactly.
charge would exist as like an extra label of like this user has been charged or this commitment has been charged or settled. There's still some language in there we need to parse out. On this replies, I think there is a reply. I don't know what I was going for here, but I'm just going to delete it for now because I don't know what I was going for. Oh, the other thing is, where would I put the rules of when nudges send in this nudges automator service? I think that makes sense.
Yeah. So like when you want to nudge a participant that they haven't paid yet,
Yeah.
or that they haven't responded.
I think there might be a concept of a nudge schedule,
Okay.
actually, because I have a nudge specifications there. So yeah, where the same place where I'm defining out the text, I can define out the schedule within a nudge specification, and then automator service can use this nudge object, the nudge specifications, to look at the schedule. Nudge specifications, I already have it. Perfect.
And that's different than a notification.
It is, because the nudge is the object that manages the sending or not sending of notification. Also, a notification can be sent from the system regardless of event.
Okay.
So let's say let's say a user's pending balance gets above $1,000. I can have a notification sent accordingly, even though they have no pending events.
Okay.
It's like, hey, you need to add a payout info and settle this out. Get this money out of our system.
But is a nudge a kind of notification?
It definitely is. The difference is that it's tied specifically to an event or a pending reply. It's actually more specifically tied to a pending reply, which I think is how I initially had it. I think it is really tied to a reply, though, because I'm not going to send a nudge if there isn't a pending reply. That's the rules of when a nudge sends. And that's what distinguishes a nudge from a notification.
Okay. I think that makes a little more sense visually on this diagram.
I agree. Cool. Kick ass. Super, super helpful. Thanks, man.
Nice. What tool is this called? Delineato.
Delineato.
It's like draw.io, but on your computer.
Yeah. Cool. I hope that... So anyway, if you've been looking over our shoulder and being bored while we talk through this, I apologize. But maybe this provided some context of all this stuff we're talking about in practice. And I will kind of follow up maybe with a video at the end of this on comparing and contrasting my domain plan and what we actually did like a month into production. That might be an interesting video. Let me turn on my screen instead of presenting. Stop presenting, so that we can kind of close this out. Okay, yeah, so here's us. Hey,
cool.
This is who you've been talking to.
That's fun.
Yeah, thanks for helping me out, man. I really appreciate it.
So when are you going to start actually writing some code? Tomorrow?
Probably this afternoon, I'm thinking. We'll see how the day goes, but possibly tomorrow or this afternoon. Why?
No, just wondering. Add me to the repo. I want to see what it looks like.
I will, yeah. I'll ping you when I make major updates. Where would you start, you think? Do you think you'd start with the user authentication? That's probably where I was thinking of starting.
Yeah, I feel like that's where everyone starts, is like user authentication.
Yeah. I'm going to really push myself to make sure there's tests on everything.
Oh, that's where I would start as tests.
Yeah, that's right. That's the first thing you write is user can sign in, like an authentication test.
Cool. All right, I'm going to go eat lunch.
Yeah,
but
do it, man.
this was fun. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks so much. Oh, I hired an editor for our podcast, which is fun.
Oh, we did. That's cool.
Yeah, so I don't have to sit and edit for 2 hours every week. He's pretty cheap, and I think it'll be well worth it. So I can just focus on making a good show and writing great code.
Cool. All right, I'll talk to you soon.
Later, man.
Later.
Bye.